Greetings and welcome to this new video where I'll talk about my experience having used the Steam Deck as my only PC for 1 week. But before we start, I would like to point out that this is not a review video. Thus, if you want to see the battery, the performance, or perhaps the screen quality, you should watch this other video by clicking here. Well, now that I got that out of the way, I would like to explain why I decided to do this challenge. To be honest, I just wanted to push the limits of this console to see exactly what it can and cannot do. For all of you who do not know, the Steam Deck runs a modified install of Arch Linux for both the desktop and the gaming mode, making it a great choice for power users. For the sake of making everything as easy as possible for anyone wishing to follow my footsteps, I forced myself to use the included Arch Linux install. But know that if you would rather use Windows, you can absolutely do that. A slight technological knowledge is needed, but everyone should be fine by following a YouTube tutorial. So, how has my experience been? Actually better than expected. I was able to do all my schoolwork with little to no effort. Unlike the Microsoft Store, which does not have all the apps that you will need for day-to-day use, Linux, on the other hand, often has a software pre-installed with all the apps that you'll ever need. Thus, if someone is not really good at using PCs or has not used Linux at all in the past, they can absolutely get around by not using commands at all. Everything is as easy as just selecting the app installer and just searching for the app you need and then downloading it. In that regard, you'll often find open source alternatives to apps like Microsoft Word, which do not spy on you. Suites like LibreOffice were completely able to replace the Microsoft counterparts. But now you might be asking yourself, was the Steam Deck actually able to replace my professional workflow? Well, not exactly, because I had to find counterparts for those programs as well. This isn't really an issue for text editing software because they are really easy to use. You just type some words on the keyboard and you see them on the screen. But for video editing software, the situation completely changes. Not only do you have to learn a new program, but you also have to get used to the way Linux handles files. And besides, to achieve the same productivity level as you would get with your normal programs, you need some time. So that's also a downside. The only exception to this occurs if you have never used another video editing software before. If this is the case, you have to learn a program already available on Linux, thus you'll not have the problem mentioned before. I tried using Kdenlive and it was able to scribe through my 1080p 60 FPS footage without any issues. So if you need to edit basic stuff like gameplay footage or maybe family videos, the Steam Deck will absolutely be able to do that. I assume that you could also render a 4K video with some proxy files enabled, but I would still not recommend you to do so because it would just be too much work for the little Steam Deck to handle. Again, industry standards like Photoshop are not going to work with the included software on the Steam Deck, thus you will have to learn GIMP, for example. And to make my point clear, this is not really a critique for the Steam Deck, because if you tried using Linux as your main operating system on a PC, you'll absolutely have the same issues because the software is not going to be available for Linux. You'll still have the possibility to install Windows on your Steam Deck, solving these issues instantly but sacrificing a lot of performance. And again, what I'm trying to state here is the fact that it's not worth it to relearn a lot of programs just for the sake of using a Steam Deck and not a laptop. Thus, if you have an old laptop that doesn't run your software anymore, I would advise you to not get a Steam Deck but rather settle on a new boring laptop. But for new users that would like to game and perhaps also edit some videos of family or gameplay, I would totally advise you to get a Steam Deck because it's just enough of what you'll need. Laptops of the same price will not have the same performance as the Steam Deck itself. Leaving all that aside, we still have to talk about programmers. Linux as a whole has most of the software that you will need for programming, and additionally, some programmers prefer to use Linux rather than Windows just because it's Unix based. I'm not going to get into details here because if you know your workflow, you subsequently know what I'm talking about. Although I have not looked into this, 3D modeling should also work fine on the Steam Deck because the software is also available on Linux. So up until this point, we've talked about both video and photo editing, about 3D modeling and about programming. So what's the last point? Gaming. Let me make this clear and straight to the point for you. This console is able to run all the games at 1080p low settings at least 45 FPS. This might not sound that surprising to you, but if we take into consideration the performance that this little console can have on arcade games or perhaps emulation, you'll absolutely love it. So Minecraft, for example, can run at 1080p at 350 FPS. Of course, this testing has been done with Optifine, and just to let you know, my 14-inch basic model of MacBook can also run the game at exactly the same performance. Well, this should be a surprise if you look at the price difference. If you would like to know, VR does not run well on this console, you should not try it, and it's absolutely expected for the small PC. So to come to an end, who would I recommend the Steam Deck as the only PC to? Mostly average users that are looking forward to using the Steam Deck as their gaming PC, but would also like to do some office tasks, perhaps also some video editing and some 3D modeling. But if you're a professional and you have already gotten used to other software rather than the one available on Linux, I would absolutely recommend you get a laptop rather than this little console. In that matter, you can just get a MacBook or a Windows laptop. Please know that if you're considering to get a Windows laptop, I would absolutely advise you to bump the GPU spec up and not get a Steam Deck at all, because it would just be a waste of money. Well, if you're a programmer and you would like to code on the Steam Deck, you would just have to look at the performance and decide if that's enough for you. As I said before, most of the programming software is already available on Linux, thus you do not have to worry about that. So I think that covers everything that has to be said about this console. Thanks a lot for watching, guys, subscribe and see you in the next one.